Hello and welcome everybody to the weekly Shir in Yonagul Mashiach on the internet. Thanks to you and your participation, this Shir has quickly grown to be the largest Shir in Yonagul Mashiach that takes place over the internet in the English language. And we encourage you and your family and your friends to continue spreading the word of Mashiach by encouraging others to join the Shir. This way, the word of Mashiach and the atmosphere of Mashiach will permeate more and more places and make the world a place that Mashiach is comfortable to reveal himself in. This week's Shir is in special schus of the special little boy who actually is here in Cincinnati for treatment, Chaim Eliezer Littman ben Dvoir Leah of the Galperin Mishpacha. In the schus of this Shir, may he have a refuah shleima ukroiva taken from Yad Mamish. This Shir takes place in the days between Yutes Kislev, Rosh Hashanah L'Chsidis, and the Yom Tov of Chanukah, which the common theme between Yutes Kislev and Chanukah is that it's a very, very spiritual ruchniistic Yom Tovim. They both represent the spiritual part of Yiddishkeit. We know that Chassidus is the Pnimius HaTorah, it's the inner part of Torah, and Chanukah is the Yom Tov that we celebrate the victory of Ruchnius over Gashmius. Chassidus teaches us that Yevanim, the Greeks, had no issue with physical service of Hashem. Go light a menorah with oil. Just don't tell me about pure olive oil. Don't tell me that you're doing mitzvahs that you don't understand. They fought against Emunah and they fought against Pnimius Hanashama. And tonight, in this week's Shir, we are going to be focusing on the Pnimius, the Ruchniistic aspect of the great fight of the Livyasan and Shor Habor that we described in our previous Shir, that will take place in the time of Mashiach, that the Shor Habor will fight with the Livyasan, and the Livyasan will kill the Shor Habor, and the Shor Habor will kill the Livyasan, and we will be eating from the meat of the Shor Habor and the fish of the Livyasan. While we explained in last year that it will be actually a physical Suda, it is self-understood that a Mashiach Suda is not about the physical delight. Because the whole point of Mashiach, Le'nistavu Chachamim, Li'mois HaMashiach, Elishepnuim B'Torah B'Chachmasa. So it obviously has an extremely spiritual component. In addition to its physical eating and drinking, there's obviously a very spiritual part to this meal. Hashem is trying to show Klal Yisrael something. And the signs that he uses to show us this message is the Shor Habor and the Livyasan. So tonight we are going to give you a glimpse and of a deeper explanation of what this activity and this fight is all about. The way to clearly know what a certain thing represents is by focusing on that thing's Hebrew name. The Alter Rebbe writes in Shar Yichud Ve'emunah, Perek Beis, that the name of each thing is the chayis of that thing. The Hebrew name of each item in the world, it's not just the name which we use to call it. It is the life source of that individual thing. And this is why we see that when someone is sick, we add a name, because the name is an additional life. And when someone faints, we call his name, because we're calling his neshama to give out the life source, some more life to that body. And that's why we find a very interesting medrash. That the medrash says that when Hashem created Adam Harishon, the Malachim got very jealous that Hashem found this new toy to play with. And they asked him, what's so special about man? What's so special about Adam Harishon? And Hashem answered, he can do something that you, all the Malachim, cannot do. They asked, what is that? He said, he can call names to all the animals of the world. They're like, wow, if so, he's very, very special. Now, me and you, we call names to everybody. We call names to everything. What's so hard to give names? But the answer is, we're not talking about nicknames, to call somebody, hey you, come here. We're talking about that Adam Arishan was able to define, and he was able to zoom in and define the life source of each thing, thereby giving it its appropriate name. Not just appropriate name, giving it its appropriate life source for that object. And that was something that all the other angels and malachim could not do. And that's why we find the Chazal tell us that before parents give a name, let's say for a bris by a boy, or by Kriyas HaTorah for a girl, that they have Ruach HaKodesh. Even though it may seem that they're naming after a Baba, a Zayda, a Rebbe, a Rebbetzin, so where's the Ruach HaKodesh involved? Yet Chazal tell us that every name that's given is given with Ruach HaKodesh. And that's why you'll find stories that people had in mind and intentions to give different names, but came the day of the bris or the day of the laning, and all of a sudden a different name came out of their mouth. I will tell you a fascinating story. That I have a cousin who has the name Betzalel. And I once asked my aunt and uncle, how did the name Betzalel come? There's no Betzalel, not on our side of the family, not on their side of the family. So they started laughing, and my uncle told me a story. He said by the day of the bris, he had in mind to give a different name. But the Moel asked, V'yikodesh Shmoi B'Yisrael, what should be the name? And he was going to give a different name, and all of a sudden he saw in front of his eyes the letters Betzalel flashing and shining. So he said Betzalel. So we see that sometimes the Ruach HaKodesh is clear, that Hashem wants a certain name for a certain person because that is the life source of that person. So let's go back and figure out what the name Livyasan is very similar to. What's the root of the word Livyasan? The root of the word Livyasan, it sounds very similar to the Shevet Levi. Now, we are very fortunate that when it comes to the names of the Shvatim, not only do we know their names, we also know the reason how they got their name. The Pasuk tells us that Leah called Levi with the name Levi, because hapam yilove ishi elai, which means now my husband will connect with me. Simply speaking, what was going on then, that Yaakov had 4 wives and he was going to have 12 Shvatim. So Levi was the 3rd child of Leah. Leah knew that if I'm going to split 12 by 4, that means 3. It means each one of the 4 Imois, her part would be 3 children. So after giving birth to her 3rd child, Leah was saying that now Yaakov will appreciate me because I gave him my shear, I gave him my 3 children. But we see that the word Levi comes from the word Yilove, which means connect. And that's why we know that Shevet Levi was singled out to serve Hashem. Chazal say, Shevet Levi ein lo nachala ba'aretz. The tribe of Levi has no portion, no land in Eretz Yisrael. Why not? Because Hashem hu nachalosoi. Hashem is the Hashem is the connection. They are part of Hashem's territory. The Leviim are deeply connected. They serve Hashem in the Beis Hamikdash. While all the other Yidden, we all serve Hashem. The Leviim, their exclusive avodah is avodas Hashem. While we build our homes, plow our fields, and we also serve Hashem, the Kehanim and Leviim from Shevet Levi, Yilove Ishi Elai, they are bonded as one with Hashem. So the Livyasan represents a very, very special tzaddik. The Livyasan represents a tzaddik whose entire being is one that is connected with Hashem. I want to share with you something. Many of us, being that most of us watching this video, definitely the one giving the shir, is far from a tzaddik. So by us, tzaddikim, it's all like one category. Yeah, tzaddikim, tzaddikim. But there are different types of tzaddikim. One type of tzaddikim, which is a very, very exclusive type, they are the tzaddikim which are nicknamed the Livyasan. The Livyasan is under the water. meaning they have nothing to do with physical land. They're covered up by the water, which represents a tzaddik who is totally out of Olam Hazeh. He has nothing to do with this physical world. Even physical mitzvahs does not necessarily apply to him. He is higher than any physical thing. He is connected with Hashem like Shevet Levi, totally bonded with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They can be hidden tzaddikim that we don't know about, but they are holding up the world very strong. These hidden tzaddikim, which they are so connected with Hashem, they have nothing to do with physical things. They don't guide the physical people. They don't even necessarily do physical mitzvahs. They are totally spiritual. A type of tzaddik that has the name Livyasan seems to be the highest type of tzaddik. An example of such a tzaddik would be Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, when he was in the cave, doesn't say anywhere that he did any mitzvahs. All it says is that they were sitting in the cave, him and his son, and they were studying the secrets of the Torah. They had no connection with any physical things. They were just in a spiritual mode. Such a type of tzaddik is Yilava Ishi Elai. He is the Livyasan. Now, there's another type of tzaddik. The tzaddik that's out there in the physical world, leading people as their Rebbe, as their guide, mentor, teacher. And he talks to people about their physical troubles. He talks to people about their physical trials. He talks to people about their spiritual ups and spiritual downs. And he's very up and out there in the world. He's very famous, he's known, he's a leader, and he obviously does physical mitzvahs. This type of tzaddik is represented with the Shor Habor. It's a great big ox, but an ox is physical. It's seen in the physical world. When Mashiach comes, there's going to be a big discussion. Which one of these two tzaddikim are greater? Which one of these two tzaddikim are more dear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Is the Livyasan, this eccentric, esoteric tzaddik, the tzaddik that Hashem loves? Or is the Shor Habor the tzaddik which led Klal Yisrael, who dealt with the physical issues of Klal Yisrael? Is this the tzaddik that is dear to Hashem? So Hashem says that when Mashiach comes, I'm going to show you how I loved both of them. It doesn't say anywhere which of these two tzaddikim are going to win the fight. It's going to be equal. What that shows is that Hashem is showing us that both of these types of avodas, Hashem loves both of these two tzaddikim. The Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah Parsha Shmini, there's a fascinating mimer which is entitled Livyasan Zeh Yetzarta L'Sachek Boy. It's very interesting, and it may be a nice mimer to learn. Parsha Shmini, Likutei Torah. And this mimer, he explains that when Mashiach comes, we're going to see the advantage of each of these two types of services of Hashem. The service of Hashem in the way of Livyasan, those special tzaddikim, and the service of Hashem in the way of Shor Habor, those tzaddikim. And it's going to come out in a revealed way that both types of service of Hashem are important, are needed, are dear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Both of these two tzaddikim enabled the Geula to become a reality in this world. Now we are going to discuss in the inner way, in a previous way, a little bit background to a seemingly puzzling thing regarding the Livyasan. The Torah tells us that Hashem created Esat Haninim Hagdoilim, the great fish. This is what the Torah describes to us in Parshas Bereshis. And Rashi brings down the story. And Rashi says Hashem created the male Livyasan and the female Livyasan. Hashem then saw that the world would not be able to exist if he had both of them. So he killed the Nekeva, and he's salting it for the tzaddikim when Mashiach comes, And now the Livyasan, the male one, will not be able to have any children, and therefore the world could continue to exist. The obvious question is, Hashem does not work by trial and error. Hashem knows what would work and what would not work. So what does it mean? Hashem created them both, found out that it wouldn't work, so he killed one of them. Hashem didn't know if it was going to work or not. It obviously was going to work. So Hashem obviously had a plan by creating it. There's a certain lesson for us to know from the fact that Hashem created the male Livyasan and the female Livyasan. And why did Hashem choose to kill the female over the male? And why did he choose to give it back to us when Mashiach comes? So again, there's a very, very fascinating explanation by the Rebbe in the Sichos Chelik Hey, Parshas Bereishis. Based on the explanation that we explained earlier about Livyasan, that Livyasan represents a level of service of Hashem which is out of this world. In the words of Chassidus, Yichudei La, total high level, which, so to speak, ignores the reality of the world. In this type of service of Hashem, that itself is split into two. There's the male Livyasan and the female Livyasan, which means the difference between a male and a female, let's take, for example, in the conception and development of a child. The man gives the seed, which is a small amount, and this seed stays in the stomach of the woman for 9 months and develops into a full-fledged human being. Which means that when we say man, we're talking about a small, defined amount of service of Hashem. When we're talking, say, female, that represents the service of Hashem in a very expanded way. In order for Mashiach to come, we need to have physical deeds, ma'aseh mitzvahs, in this physical world. So Hashem says that service of Hashem in a way of Livyasan, in a way of total ignoring this world, is very, if everyone is on that level, so then Dira b'tachtonim, the physical world developing and becoming a godly place, will not happen. So therefore, we have to get rid of this aspect of service of Hashem, but not completely. A person does need certain moments that he serves Hashem on this high level. I'll give you a practical example of what I'm talking about, because I see that many of you watching this video are looking at me a little bit perplexed. What are you talking about? So let me explain. I'll give you the best example that I can. You have a shliach whose job it is to go to a city and bring Yidden closer to Hashem. He does with them miftzoyim, miftzah tefillin, miftzah mezuzah, miftzah kashrus. Slowly, he brings them closer to Hashem. Once a year, the Rebbe wants that they should all leave their shlichus and come to Crown Heights, the Kinus HaShluchim. Why is that necessary? Aren't they ruining their shlichus? How could they leave their people and come to Crown Heights? The answer is that they need that one Shabbos by the Rebbe to give them chizuk for their whole year's avodah. Because when we live in the world, after a while we forget that we are messengers to elevate the world. We sometimes think that we are part of the world. We get too comfortable. So we have to zoom out of the world, go back to the source, go to the Rebbe for that one Shabbos, which that would be like represented by the male of Yasin, the small nekuda of Yichudei La. You're forgetting about everything, your Chabad house, the people, just you and the Rebbe again. And that infuses you with energy to go back into the world for the rest of your avodah. So that's why Hashem left the male of Yasin. However, when Mashiach comes, we're all going to reach the level of the female of Yasin. The avodah Hashem, which is beyond the world, because the world is going to be elevated to a level of umala aretz deas Hashem kamayim layom echasim. We're all going to be covered up with water, like Livyasan. That means we're going to forget about the physical things, because at that point we're going to be totally one with Hashem. Like it says when Mashiach comes, madanim mitzuyin ka'afar. It doesn't just mean that we're going to have physical things. It's going to be so much like the dirt. We are going to look at physicality like dirt. That's the true explanation in the Rambam. And therefore, then Hashem is going to bring back the female Livyasan. And that's why Hashem created at the beginning. We should know that that's the goal. But we're only going to get to that goal in the times of Mashiach. And the more we learn about these things, the closer we're going to get to Mashiach. Thank you so much for watching this shiur. And each and every one of you, and if you're here at this point, it means you enjoyed the shiur, you can watch our previous 3 shiurim by going and subscribing to the shiur by going to YouTube and type in Mashiach Weekly, and you can subscribe to our weekly shiur in Yonagul Mashiach. Thank you very much for traveling with us. Looking forward to seeing you, your friends and family, together in the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh. Take it from Yad Mamash.